Welcome to the Front Four Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Marchese, alongside me, my co-host, my buddy, my pal, Jeff Azaparty. You can follow us on Twitter at MattyMar89, at J_party, at Front4 Fantasy. This is episode 14, and we were on a hiatus last week.
Yeah, I apologize.
Jeff,
that was on me, but
Jeff came down with illness. I was busy anyway, so I mean, nobody wants to see me do a solo show here. So
it's all good.
Glad to be back.
And appreciate the break, Matty. Thank you. Even though you offered to fill in for me, I do appreciate it.
No
it's a holiday season, so I won't even fight you on the friend part. Like, let's go. I will say I did notice it's December, and I still see something over your lip there. What's going on? What's going on there, pal?
I kind of like it. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
what does the wife think? Does she like it?
I don't care.
Doesn't. You better hope she doesn't watch.
She doesn't. I know she doesn't.
Really? She doesn't want to beat you at fantasy. Come on.
Yeah, she doesn't like facial hair. Period. So it doesn't matter because you know me.
Does she know who she married?
Yeah, seriously. It's just like when she says, "What are you doing on Sunday?" It's like, I don't know. What do you think I'm doing on Sunday? She's like, "Well, you watch too much football." I'm like, listen, you knew what you were getting into when you married me. This was part of the contract. All right, let's get right into it because for some people they're in the playoffs right now, which I don't get because there's still a bye week this week for some teams. Yeah. But for the other normal leagues, playoffs are just around the corner. So we're going to look at planning for defenses and just some interesting QB schedules coming up. And for me,
because both seem to be pretty important, right, Maddie? And if you have a chance, especially with playoffs, like you said, coming up or starting, like if you can get a little bit ahead, you got a spot on your bench and like guys maybe that are droppable, you aren't going to lose or you're not going to ever put in, and maybe you don't think they're going to help other people out. Why not drop them? Try and look a bit ahead and get ahead and base something on a matchup that could work for you, right? Like,
yeah, I think there's some interesting ones on both sides. So I'm going to handle the defenses and Jeff is going to handle the quarterbacks. So the way I kind of look at this with defenses is if you've gotten to this point and you're one of the better teams, you probably have a good defense that you're playing every week. But if your roster, allows you to take some chances on some defenses, then it's probably worth it. Seattle's really interesting this week coming up, even though they don't have Jamal Adams, but they have the Jets. So, and the Jets, Zach Wilson did look better when he came back from injury, which we talked about was probably going to be the case because he actually got to see things. But Seattle's defense is still kind of just hanging around. And they just came off of a big win against the Niners, although they did give up a ton of points to George Kittle. I don't know. I think the Seattle Seahawks are a decent one this week. And the Atlanta Falcons going up against Carolina this week is another one because Carolina's got Cam Newton. And if it's not Cam Newton, it's PJ Walker. And those guys are going to throw interceptions. And I can't believe that I just said that. But the team that I'm looking at, because they might still be available because they were so bad at the beginning of the season, is the Kansas City Chiefs. And their schedule is super interesting coming up because they have the Raiders, they have the Chargers, they have the Steelers, they have the Bengals. So there's some offenses in there with turnover-prone quarterbacks. Justin Herbert less so than the other three, but Justin Herbert's been giving up interceptions and has turned the ball over. The Chiefs defense has not allowed more. They've allowed 17 or more points only once since they lost week 5 against Buffalo, where they gave up 38 points. So that would be the team that I'm looking at to be one to pick up, to look forward to, because if you're in, you probably have, maybe you have the Bills defense, maybe you have the Bucks defense, who's been getting a ton of sacks lately. But, if you have Buffalo, the Chiefs would be a great pickup this week because Buffalo's playing Tampa Bay. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Looking ahead to kind of see what's available.
And use those matchups in your favor, right? Nothing worse than, somebody else picking up a defense because they need to, and that defense putting up a bunch of points against you. Exactly. And I think same thing with QBs. Like we've talked about what QBs have done this year. And like some of them, and certain ones we thought we could rely on just haven't been that consistent, right? So if we can look at some kind of quarterbacks and maybe ones that actually might be available to you, like that you could play moving forward or in a certain situation that gives you a better matchup than you have with your QB, why not go for it? Like, why wouldn't you look at guys like Taysom Hill or Tyler Heineke or Tua or even Jimmy Garoppolo? To me, Jimmy Garoppolo's got a great schedule down the stretch. So if you don't like a matchup maybe your quarterback has in the weeks coming up, like a guy like Jimmy G is a great guy, I think, to look at for those playoff weeks where you think maybe even a few extra points could do you good.
Yeah, Jimmy G has a really good schedule. I like that you mentioned Taysom Hill in there because if he's still available, I'd be grabbing Taysom Hill wherever I can. Yeah, the guy just came off a 100-yard rushing game. He's got a bum finger. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to run him a ton. And Alvin Kamara is back, or at least that's what it looks like. So
Taysom's rest this season, it's the Jets this week. Then he's got Tampa, Miami, and Carolina, which, you know, I mean, some people look at those defenses as being a bit tough, but we know his scrambling ability, and he seems to be back using his legs. Like, he has potential for put up some pretty good points.
He, even with the 4 interceptions, he still had a great fantasy day. Right. Now, part of it was saved by that late stupid touchdown to Deontay Harris, which apparently Dallas forgot how to tackle on one play, but you know, some of the interceptions weren't his fault. Some of them were. One was tipped. Like, there's a lot that went into that. But if the guy has the ability to rush for 100 yards, there's only a select few quarterbacks that can do that. And with Kamara back, they'll run RPOs like crazy. I also like that you threw in Tua there because he's been really good since he came back from injury.
Really good last couple of weeks, and he's looking good. And just to backtrack a little bit, Jimmy G's schedule rest of the year: Cincy, Atlanta, Tennessee, and Houston. So that's some pretty good. I know we both said he had a good line. He had good. I just wanted to give that because my computer froze.
That is probably the best. Yeah. That's the best remaining schedule probably of any quarterback.
For sure. And Tua again has he has his bye this week. So again, if somebody's dropping him because they need a player, go grab him because the next week he's got the Jets. Depending who your other quarterback is, he's a good spot to pick up and put in. And like you said, last 3 weeks, he's looked pretty good. I mean, shoot, the last 6 weeks, he's been pretty good, you know? But yeah, he's got the Jets, New Orleans, and Tennessee. And we know Tennessee can break down. And that'll, like, you know,
Tennessee,
I could see something.
Tennessee just, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand Tennessee. I don't think they're all that good. And they're 8-3. And it makes zero sense to me.
So the last one I want to throw at you, Matty, is Big Ben. Had a pretty good 2 out of the last 3 weeks. He's had pretty good weeks. He's had almost 20 points. Well, he had over 20 points 3 weeks ago. Then he had a down week. Then last week he got really close to 20 points again. In his schedule, Minnesota this week, wouldn't be surprised to see a big week this week. Tennessee, Kansas City, and Cleveland. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Ben might be a bit of a stash if you have the bench spot.
And this is like the Ben farewell tour, right? Because it sounds like he's done after this year, so he's going to want to go out with a bang. I mean, we're going to talk about one of his playmakers in the next block here, but Ben Roethlisberger's been fine. Like, he's been okay. And you know, have we been concerned about the elbow and all the other things? Yeah, sure, but he hasn't actually been that bad. I feel like he's turned the ball over a lot less than he did last year.
Yeah, he's being more careful with it for sure. And even again, like we talked about, those little dump offs to whether it's Najee or Pat, like Freiermuth, like can't go wrong with those either. They all count. They get him points, especially if you're in the red zone. Why not?
Yeah. So. All right, let's move on. And this was something that we kind of came up with because we were looking up stuff and we're just shocked at some of the things that we saw. So when I texted you this, you were like, pardon? Like, there's no way. So things that we found out that were shocking. And the one that stood out to me, and there's a couple of other ones that I'm going to add here, but the first one was that Deontay Johnson is wide receiver 7.
Wow.
On the year. And that's with, like, his touchdown numbers are up. He has 6. He does have 76 catches for 914 yards, and he's 4th in the league in targets with 120. And that just goes to what we were talking about with Ben Roethlisberger. Obviously, Deontay is the target hog there. We are aware of that. And
especially going down the field, right? Like we said,
yeah.
If Ben keeps the ball close, but when he's going downfield, he's definitely looking for Deontay Johnson. That's the stat I had too. 10 targets in 9 out of the 11 games this season. Which is crazy. Like that's good number. That's the kind of numbers you want a receiver to get.
That's alpha numbers. And everybody thought that was going to be Chase Claypool this year, and he's battled injury and whatnot. But with no Juju there, it's another guy that you don't have to worry about taking targets away from Deontay Johnson, and he's been excellent. This one, the next one here.
Actually, look, can I add something to Deontay? Because I was so surprised when you told me that, Maddie, that I had to go look it up. And you know what stat I found on Deontay that really surprised me? He led the NFL in drops last week. You know when he had his first drop this year? Week 13. Yeah. Like he hadn't had a drop since till week 13 this year. And last year he led the league in drops. Like that's got to be a huge part of the massive improvement we've seen. Like it's insane to me, and good for him for doing that. Like, you know, I mean, that drop he did have week 13 was a touchdown pass, but whatever, we can get by it because it's the first one he's had all year. But like, man, that'll make a difference in your numbers. So like Ben trusts him, he keeps going to him and the workload's there. So why not? But I thought that's very key. If he got rid of those drop, hopefully they don't rear its head again after that one in week 13, but feel pretty confident in Deontay this year.
For sure. Okay, this one made me laugh. I was looking at the running backs and I was like, that guy seems really high on this list. Derrick Henry has not played since week 8 against Indianapolis. Can you take a stab at where Derrick Henry is ranked?
He's got to still be top 10, which is crazy. No idea. No, I don't even know.
RB8.
Come on.
And he has 2 less points than Ezekiel Elliott, who's in 7th. So what that tells us,
thing is crazy.
What that tells us is that Derrick Henry was going to have one of the greatest fantasy seasons for a running back that we've ever seen. And it was cut short in week 8, and he's still in the top 8.
Well,
that
I know
to me is mind-boggling.
That is mind-boggling. And like I said to you, I think we talked about on this podcast, how Derrick Henry isn't the consensus number 1 guy to draft every year is crazy. I know Jonathan Taylor's making a strong push now to the top of the running back class, but like Derrick Henry is just a beast, and he was proving it. Like he was by far number 1. Like you said, to not play that long, like everybody on that list in the top 10 has minimum 3, if not 4, or even 5 games more than him. Like that's insane.
Yeah. RB8. When I saw that, I was like, that can't be right. But then I remember when he was injured, he was so far ahead of everybody else.
Without a doubt.
That
he was ahead of some QBs in terms of yards and stuff. Like he was insane what he was doing.
Yeah, it really is a shame. Although it helps the Bills in a roundabout way, but it's a real
doesn't
shame.
Always come back to the Bills, Matty. Settle down.
You know what? You're right. I don't even want to talk about them.
Yeah, I'm done with them. Are you sure you want to talk about them?
No, I don't want to talk about them. I'm really pissed off about that. And did you have one, or did you want to leave it? Because I know you had mentioned somebody before we got on, and then I got one more.
Yeah, no, I did, but I was looking at the wrong list. You know which one I'll mention, Maddie? It's let me pull it back up here. It's in the tight ends. Let's go to tight ends. And I'm going to say Mike Gesicki, who's ranked number 4 overall on the year. Do you remember week 1 when he had a 0 and everyone was freaking out? Yeah. He still has managed to stay up there, and he's tight end number 4 on the year, which to me is kind of crazy. Like he's ahead of guys. I know Kittle was hurt for a while, but ahead of Kittle, ahead of Waller, ahead of Dallas Goedert, who's playing a middle, ahead of Kyle Pitts, Dawson Knox, like Zach Ertz, who we see trending ahead. Like, I don't know, Gesicki steadily and without much. Like, I don't remember him scoring a ton of touchdowns. I don't remember huge weeks for him, but at least in tight end where it's been super inconsistent, it seems like he's put up some consistent numbers.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. The inconsistencies is why Mike Gesicki's probably there, because I feel like he's disappeared some weeks where he's put up like zeros on multiple weeks.
Yeah,
which is weird, but you know, we're going to talk about one of his teammates as to maybe why it's been so inconsistent. But I wanted to finish this one off with Noah Fant. Tight end 16 on the season. And this was supposed to be the breakout year. It doesn't help that they have him blocking a lot. It doesn't help that Teddy Bridgewater isn't very good. But, you know, when you look at just that Denver offense as a whole, it's really, there was a ton of talent on there, except for the quarterback position. So if they were able to get a competent quarterback, how good would that team be?
No kidding.
Because they have all these weapons. Like if you could, Noah Fant was one of the most athletic tight ends that's ever come out of the draft. And he was drafted in the first round for a reason. But they haven't, you know, outside of his rookie year. Last year was a good year, but he was banged up. But I just haven't seen it. I don't see enough volume there. I don't see enough, you know, trying to make him one of the focal points of the offense. So getting a quarterback for the Broncos is going to be key. But when I saw Noah Fant tight end 16, couldn't believe
crazy.
What I saw.
Well, but even in terms of receivers, Matty, like, yeah, it just begs the question to the whole Broncos offense. Like, who's the alpha receiver there to you? Like at the start of the season, who did we think it was?
I thought it was Judy.
Right. Okay. But even Cortland Sutton made a play for a while. I think most leagues he might be droppable right now. Like you can't rely on him in the playoffs. Like
his numbers
right now.
His numbers
are drastically
his numbers are drastically different with Judy playing than without. Like it's like he's not playable when Jerry Judy's in the lineup.
That's what I mean. With Judy back now, you can't play him. Like there's no chance.
Yeah, and that goes to partially the quarterback, but also the play calling as well. Like they're not getting guys involved enough. So I'd be curious to see what
you even said, so the one guy I looked at the list because I was really curious about him was Javonte Williams with the Broncos too, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that, like you're saying, the play calling that's screwing up that whole offense is some weeks they give him a workload, a workhorse workload, and then other weeks they don't. Like it's crazy. So I wondered what his numbers were because sometimes he shows that he can handle it, and they show that they do have a good run game when they want to commit to it, but they just don't commit to it. And again, we've talked about this before. It helps nobody in that matter because your running backs are inconsistent, your receivers are inconsistent. Because if you have an established running game, opens the passing game, but the Broncos haven't been able to do either. Right, like
which is strange because they have two talented running backs. Like really, Melvin Gordon's not going anywhere,
right?
You know, okay. Let's move on to a rookie wide receiver, and I was gonna include him in the things that I found shocking, but you convinced me that this guy deserves his own block, and you're right. Jaylen Waddle was my wide receiver 2 coming into the draft behind Jamar Chase. And I felt really good about that because everybody's like, oh, Devonta Smith. I'm like, okay, let's see what happens here. Jaylen Waddle's the better receiver. Jaylen Waddle would have been a first-round pick the year before if he had come into the draft. All he's done, and he's caught fire of late, but he has 86 catches for 849 yards and 4 touchdowns. He is outscoring Jamar Chase by 1 point. He's the guy in Miami. And granted, there have been a bunch of injuries like Devontae Parker has been hurt. Will Fuller has been a ghost.
But most notably Tua, right? Tua was out for a bunch of weeks.
Yeah. But what's happened is him and Tua, and they played together at Alabama. So there is a little bit of familiarity there.
Right.
But when you get to the NFL level, it doesn't always work. It's working. And the thing that I love, like if you have Jaylen Waddle on your roster, the thing that you have to love about him is that they use him in every kind of situation. They throw it to him deep. They use him on screen. Sometimes they use him in the running game, like on end arounds and all that. Like they use him a ton, and he looks like a legit stud. This is a good wide receiver class that we've seen, and I think one of the best ones. We haven't even gotten to see him all that much is Rashad Bateman, but Jaylen Waddle's been absolutely excellent, and he's really caught fire the last 6 or 7 weeks.
Without a doubt, Matty. But see, so the one thing I'll say to that is I think rookie wide receivers especially usually have better second halves of the year, right? And I know you'll say, like you said, he's out scoring Jamar Chase. It's because Jamar Chase came out of a cannon. Like there's been no option but for defensive focus on him and game plan for him. Meanwhile, Waddle, receivers sometimes typically take a little bit of time to adjust to the league. They get their footing, right? Establish a connection with their quarterback. Like you said, him and Tua have one. check for Waddle to be even better, right? Like Elijah Moore, he got adjusted to the league. All of a sudden, we started seeing him have some great weeks. Like I think you kind of got to expect these rookie wide receivers as we get into the second half of the league to show some more consistency and be better. And if it's there, it's up to the quarterback to take care of it. And like you said, I think the familiarity and the chemistry between him and Tua will just make Waddle keep going up at least for the rest of the year, man. Like in the terms of Elijah Moore, I don't know if you can trust his QB. Devontae Smith, I don't know if you can trust his QB. Tua, out of all those guys, out of all those rookie QBs, Waddle is the guy I would say I trust his QB the most to keep getting him the ball.
Yeah, and he's become the focal point, much like Elijah Moore has become the focal point of the offense in New York, especially with no Michael Carter there.
Yeah, without a doubt. And again, with good rookie receivers, that could happen. That tends to happen by the end of the year, I think.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of people that were really hesitant on Waddle because of, he had the ankle injury and he barely played last year, but it's worked out for him. I mean, I wasn't so sure about the landing spot. I really thought Miami should have invested in the offensive line with that pick.
For sure, without a doubt. I think
it's worked out. I mean, I can't complain about it now because it's been really good. And the resurgence of Tua, well, not resurgence because he never surged, but Tua kind of finding his game and then connecting with Waddle has been a big reason why the Miami Dolphins are back in the playoff chase. They've won 5 games in a row. So they're right there again, right?
Yep. I agree with you 100%, man.
Yeah, it's a really exciting rookie wide receiver.
I think Tua was battling that injury he had early on in the season, and he wasn't feeling comfortable. He was feeling the pressure. Now he's just playing football, man. You could see it. They're calling the game better for him, and it's looking a lot better in Miami.
Yeah, sure. He did have like 30 completions this past week, but it was for like 215 yards or something. I kind of want to see them air it out a little bit, but whatever, it's working. So who am I to say anything? Okay. Now we're going to move to a high-powered offense, and we do have a little bit of breaking news as it pertains to this offense. So Keenan Allen was already on the COVID list. Mike Williams is now on the COVID list as well.
Oh, really? And he just came back. Come on, man.
And Mike Williams we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Mike Williams has the schedule going forward where you're like, I like this, and they're going to get him back. And he integrated back into the offense, has been really good. But let's just let's just talk about this offense as a whole, because I don't think it gets enough credit for how good it actually is, especially from a fantasy perspective. So Keenan Allen's wide receiver 8. Mike Williams is wide receiver 15. Austin Eckler is running back 2, and Justin Herbert is QB 3. Not too many offenses can boast guys that high in those positions.
We talked about it at the beginning of the season. No, those are the offenses you look for, right? Guys that can sustain and do that for that many people, right? Like, it's crazy.
And the only offense that can say that is Tampa Bay. That is even remotely close to it. Because I think Tom Brady is QB1 or pretty close to it. Leonard Fournette, I think, was RB4. Mike Williams was wide receiver 12, and then Godwin was, I think he was like wide receiver 9 or something like that. Right. So nobody talks about the Chargers offense like we do the Tampa Bay offense. Sure, but they're excellent. Like Justin Herbert right now is probably my QB4 in Dynasty behind Mahomes, Allen, and Murray. He's past Dak Prescott for me.
Yeah, no, I would totally disagree with that.
I had Deshaun Watson high, but we'll see what happens there. But
him and Burrow would be a toss-up for me. Like, they're up there together.
Really, eh?
Yeah, I would think so.
See, I think he's way ahead of Burrow.
Yeah? Okay,
I just think he's got that. I think he has more of a gunslinger mentality than Burrow does. Yeah, that's true. But he's also better with his legs than Burrow is. I think Burrow is not bad, but I think Herbert is better athletically.
Saying in terms of QBs of the future, like the guys starting to climb up that ladder of those QBs, like, making their way into that upper echelon. I think those are the 2 guys to watch. But I'm with you.
Oh yeah,
well, you're right. And what you just said is right. Herbert is probably ahead of Burrow in that regard for sure.
But
I mean, and Burrow has been showing some signs of.
But he always gets hurt.
Yeah, it's true. And they're trying to make him throw the ball a bit more. And I think that, as we just talked about with Jamar Chase, I think that's why his numbers are a bit down. He's throwing the ball a bit more, making a few more mistakes. Like, he's got a bit more growing to do. So
yeah,
but sure. They are two guys to watch. And Herbert is definitely moving his way to the upper echelon of quarterbacks without a doubt.
And let's not forget with Joe Burrow that he missed basically half the season last year.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's still a little bit of a learning curve here. Now, the offense, it feels like they've looked better when they incorporate Mike Williams in it. Like when Mike Williams gets 8+ targets, Mike Williams is a very, very good receiver, and they use him all over the field. Keenan Allen's going to get his. Keenan Allen's great. He had the 2 touchdowns this past week, and he's been a PPR monster since he came into the league, basically.
Right.
But it makes Justin Herbert, like, there was no, what's the word I'm looking? It wasn't a coincidence that when Mike Williams' numbers were down, that Justin Herbert's numbers were down as well. Yeah. Like there's proof that we've seen that that's the case. But when they incorporate Mike Williams into the offense, well, that makes them look totally different. We'll see what happens this week if either of these guys play, because that's going to be a different story. But, if Mike Williams finishes as a wide receiver 15 like he is now, and Keenan Allen maintains wide receiver 8, Austin Eckler's still going to get his. He's been incredible. We haven't even really talked about him. He's been incredible, and he's scoring touchdowns, which everybody's like, oh, Austin Eckler's not going to score touchdowns. They're going to give those to somebody else. Austin Eckler's getting a hefty workload, and it's worked out really well for him. So that offense is as good as any other offense in the NFL right now, especially quick strike offense, because of all the talent they have. It's pretty impressive.
And like you said, but you want consistency in your offense, right? And this offense has only scored under 2 touchdowns twice all year. They put up points, right, on a weekly basis, which, hey, those points means everyone's scoring points, right? The more
somebody's getting those points.
Yeah, exactly, without a doubt. So I'm with you, Matty. It's all about that.
Except when you see those Donald Parham or Jared Cook touchdowns that you're just like, oh, really? Like they couldn't have gone to somebody else. Like, come on. Anyway, all right. So let's wrap things up here with the not so 2-minute drill. DeAndre Swift does not look like he's going to play this week, but there's a chance that he's going to play next week. Are you surprised that they're bringing him back? Like their season's over. I know for fantasy
they just got their
managers,
first win, man. They got to go on a run.
I know.
Come on. And although the running game didn't do much in that game where they got the win, it's pretty crazy. I don't know. Yeah, I am a little bit surprised.
It shows you that DeAndre Swift is a really talented player because they threw the ball a ton. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown had his breakout game.
Yeah. And hopefully it's or start to realize how good he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you drafted him for a reason. Again, get him involved. Like everybody's been waiting for it. So
another one of those rookie receivers that it's taking a little bit of time to get acclimated, but maybe this is a sign. And maybe the offense just threw the ball a ton and threw it to him because DeAndre Swift was out. Maybe that's part of it. The Vikings defense looked terrible. So we don't even need to get into that.
Like they do.
I know you'll be happy about this because you have him rostered in our work league. Alvin Kamara got in a full practice and looks to be a go.
We'll play this week.
Has to be a heavy workload coming because Mark Ingram tests positive for COVID and there's a chance that he may not play. So I don't know. What's the expectation? We talked about this before he got hurt with Taysom Hill.
Especially with Taysom Hill. That's what I was going to say. With Taysom coming in, very curious to see what happens there and what that dynamic is. His numbers did go down a bit when Taysom was in. So I'm very curious to see how this works and what happens here.
Do we think he's more of an RB2 rather than a full flight RB1, like high end mid-range RB2 instead of an RB1? Or are we still locking him into a top 12 running back spot?
I think you got to lock him into the top 12 spot. Especially if you said with Ingram's out. Yeah, with Ingram's out, you kind of have to, right?
Because they gave They gave Ingram carries when the two of them were in the lineup, which was 100%. Very surprising.
Yeah, he almost seemed to get more of that, right? It was all those little passes that Kamara missed when Taysom came over because he wouldn't do that. He'd either fake it and run or do something else. But the straightaway runs, they would still give those to Ingram. So I think Kamara will still get those. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty good workload. Well,
hey, let's talk about a couple other running backs, actually, Matty. So let's talk about your boy, Saquon Barkley. What are your hopes for him the rest of the year? He's coming back into a messed up situation, right? Backup quarterback in, that offense is failing. Could he be a difference maker, in these playoff weeks if he hits his stride here? Could he win you your league? I'm new offensive coordinator. What do they do with him for the next couple weeks? You have to start him, right?
Yeah.
If he's playing.
my optimism lies in the fact that Freddie Kitchens is calling plays and not Jason Garrett, because I think Jason Garrett's one of the worst play callers that we've seen in a long time. So I think that's part of it. But the Giants' offensive line isn't that good. And when you know there's not that big of a threat to throw the ball, like Daniel Jones hasn't been good, but Mike Glennon's not any better. And so although they did beat the Eagles a couple of weeks ago, you know where I think.
And you mean like just Kitchens relating back to Jason Garrett's playbook, like just continuing what Jason Garrett was doing, right? Like,
well, he's changing up. I think he's just deploying his guys a little bit differently, right? I don't think the playbook changes too much, but there are going to be some wrinkles in there. You know where I think Barkley's best value is going to be in the passing game, because the Giants stink.
Right.
And so they're not going to run. I think Barkley had 11 carries, but then he also had like 6 catches or something like that. So I think that's where we're leaning with him. Like, if you think he's going to have a breakout game, it's probably not going to be in the running attack. It's going to be in the passing attack, because the Giants are just going to have to throw the ball. So I think that's where his value lies right now. But going forward, unless that team fixes the offensive line or gets a quarterback, and by the way, Russell Wilson apparently is open to being traded to, I think it was Denver, New Orleans, and the Giants.
I say it goes to New York. I thought, what happened to Chicago? Wasn't, but I guess they got Fields.
Well, they have Fields now,
originally,
right?
I could totally see the Giants. I had heard that somewhere. Like, I think his wife might push him to go to a big city market like that. I could totally see Russell Wilson ending up. And they have some
good offensive
team. Yeah, they have some weapons there. I would not be surprised at all. And
it's better than what he has right now.
You mentioned him. Russ looked pretty good last week. Could he be back? Is he a guy you're full tilt ahead in the playoffs with, or not yet?
I'm still worried about that finger. I'm still worried about that. He was bad the first 2 weeks that he came back. He was bad. And they got DK Metcalf involved a little bit finally, but I don't know. They have a good matchup this week.
They sure do.
So, I mean, I can't do it. I can't do it. I would probably start him if I had him.
Yeah.
Because at that point, okay, we talked about it earlier. Russell Wilson or Jimmy G. They battled it out this past week.
Yeah. How's Debo? That's Debo's. Yeah, for sure.
That's going to be a big factor for me.
That'll be the factor.
But Kittle was good. Right? Kittle was good.
Yeah, it's true. No. San Fran has all their offensive weapons firing right now, which is what's making Jimmy G dangerous. Like I've said before, I always thought Trey Lance would be in at this point, and you'd be betting on him to win you your league. Shoot, Jimmy G might be the fantasy winner right now.
Yeah,
league winner right now. It's crazy.
We missed that one. And you're going to miss us, because this is the end of episode 14. Check us out on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. Front 4 Fantasy Football Podcast. Follow us at front4 fantasy, at MattyMar89, and at J_party. We'll talk to you next week.